Sandy Carter is a social business evangelist, and she truly believes in the power of social media. And she leads the ecosystem development team at IBM. She is energized by creativity, and we are very happy to have her here today. Welcome to the show, Sandy. Tell us, how is the cloud ecosystem going to change the way we look at businesses?
Well, I think there's several things that the cloud is doing. You know, before, when startups got funding, they invested most of their money, estimates are 60 to 70%, in the infrastructure, in the technology. Today, with the cloud, they can spend virtually $0 and get access to a great, quick way to produce an application. And so you can really hone in on not the technology, but on what you're passionate about, what your application does. So I think the cloud is completely changing and revolutionizing startups and entrepreneurship.
Great. And what are the specific initiatives that IBM is taking to foster innovation in startups?
Well, I think a couple of things. We're providing the tooling, I guess, or the services so that you can innovate quickly. So think about, cognitive on top of Bluemix. It enables you to embed that thinking or learning into an application. So one of our retail startups, they're able to predict buying patterns, which gives them an innovative competitive advantage. The IoT recipes that we have available on DeveloperWorks, so it makes it really easy for you to use a Raspberry Pi or to connect to a great Intel sensor, and that enables you to quickly innovate in that rapidly growing wearable space or B2B enterprise space as well. So I think those two technologies help, but I also know that IBM is investing a lot in women entrepreneurs. And we know that diversity breeds innovation. All the studies show it. And so one of the big things that IBM's doing is really putting a lot of muscle around women and underrepresented minorities going into business, because then you hire people and you get that diversity of idea, which leads to great innovation.
Right. And how do you view the Indian ecosystem?
Well, I think that the Indian ecosystem has really changed. I've kind of watched India go from being outsourcing to being services to now being a startup nation, right? Really honing in on now this entrepreneur spirit. And I feel it everywhere I go in India, which has now been Mumbai and Bangalore, where I think the ecosystem is just really taking off. And you've got what I consider the cores, right? You've got mentorship. You're starting to have more mentorship here, led by Tycon, an organization I work with a lot in Silicon Valley in India. You've got funding coming in. Funding sources are required. You've got talent everywhere, and I think that talent is amazing. And then you've got mentoring, which is so critical. So you've got all the elements. I think now is the perfect time for India to grab hold of that and just ride it all the way up.
And tell us a little bit about your role as a social business evangelist.
So I have been doing social, I think, since social started. I was one of the first folks at IBM to have a blog, which is where social really began, if you remember back that far. I was one of the first teams to post a IBM video to YouTube, which was like, whoa, at the time. So I really started experimenting and being an innovator at IBM in social and how things would happen socially. And now it's the way I form relationships with clients, with partners. It's the way I'll keep in touch with you guys, will be through social means. I think it's really opened up a door to have many relationships across the startup ecosystem than I ever have before. So I think being a social business evangelist helps me to be the chief entrepreneur evangelist for IBM and the chief developer evangelist, because I do all that through social and social business.
Tell us a bit about the challenges that you have faced and the lessons that you can share.
Well, I think there's a lot. I think maybe the first lesson is just being willing to take a risk. Being brave doesn't mean that you're not afraid. It just means that you're afraid and you still move forward. And I think, in life, being willing to take that risk is a big deal, and it's something that women don't do enough, and something that I've learned as I've gone through my career, from taking a risk in leadership capability areas or taking a risk in a new technology, just being able to reach forward. I would say another big lesson that I've learned is around social. So you brought up social business before. I do think one of the big areas for women is their social media influence and their brand. And I think a big lesson I've learned is that you can build your brand up through social, and it's a good outlet for women who typically don't like to toot their own horn. It's a way to share, to be humble in the way that you do it, but yet to get your brand and your presence out there pretty powerfully.
Thank you so much for your time, and have a great stay in India.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. It was a big honor to
talking
be
you.
on here. Thank you.
Started by two friends, Piyush and Tuhin, Jumping Goose is a strategic design agency based out of Bengaluru. What do you think about the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India today?
It's challenging in a lot of ways. I think it's also very sector dependent. I think today, on one hand, you have the Flipkarts and the e-commerce and mobile technology, which is booming, and we're hearing of funding coming in dime a dozen. On the other hand, you have manufacturing today, which is languishing.